How's everybody doing here today? All right. We're at the end of the day, and I know everybody's probably waiting to get to dinner and drinks afterwards, but we want to get going here today. Got a great panel. Scott gave me a good intro, but I pale in comparison to all of these people. So without that, we'll go ahead and get started and talk about some things about attribution, and hopefully everybody can learn something new today. So first off, I think if you can each introduce yourself, and then just in a 30 seconds, kind of what attribution means to you and for your organization. So Barkha, to my left, you want to get started with that?
Sure. Hi everyone, Barkha Saxena. I'm the Chief Data Officer at Poshmark. Poshmark is the largest social commerce marketplace. We are on the mission to make shopping fun and simple while enabling a lot of entrepreneurial retailers. So if you want to be a retailer, Poshmark is the place for you to get started. From the attribution perspective, so as I mentioned, I come from the data team, and my job is to enable, we work with all different functions, but working with the marketing team, our job is to make sure that they are developing the best marketing strategies to bring in new users as well as bringing back the existing users. And we do that through a lot of internal and external channels. So my attribution for us means figuring out what are the different channels and different ways, internal and external, we are bringing all these users, new and existing, back to the platform and understanding how they are behaving differently. And we look at that from the multiple dimensions perspective, being a social marketplace. It's not all about just them making a purchase, like they're making purchase, are they socially connected, are they listing in the platform, are they adding value to the network? So it's a multi-dimensional attribution strategy.
Thanks, Barkha.
Hi, I'm Jeff Sanders. I'm the SVP of Growth at Casper. I hope you all know what Casper is. If you don't, come find me. Maybe I can sell you a mattress by the end of the day. Attribution, as a performance marketer, attribution is near and dear to my heart, and I tried to think a little bit about the definition that I use. And the way I try and think about it is, looking at a specific business outcome, what are the marketing activities that occurred within channels and across channels to actually drive that outcome? And an important distinction that I think about and that I'll probably talk a little bit more about is it's not just measuring all the things that happened prior to that business action, it's actually what are the things that drove it and what are the things that actually changed consumer behavior. And that distinction is actually really, really important to me, because just because you can measure something doesn't mean that it actually did anything.
I'm Stephen Kuhl. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Burrow. Burrow is a furniture brand. Our mission is to simplify furniture for people. And what we mean by that is the way that you shop for furniture, simplifying that, the way it gets shipped and delivered to you. So fast, in a week, for free, always with every product in compact packaging. How you live with the furniture, so using more thoughtful consumer-driven design to make better products for your home. And then finally, how you move with it, knowing that most modern consumers are going to move again every couple of years, and furniture is really hard to move normally. For us, attribution, I think, is one of those things that every company gets obsessed with. Of what role and what drove it, the sale at every step in the process, and you can kind of start chasing your tail in terms of trying to uncover all these different data pieces, and it's important for us to align attribution to our business goals and what pieces of information are actually going to drive decision making for us as a business, and not just have perfect data for the sake of perfect data. And if you can kind of get creative and take a step back and look at the bigger picture, you can find out what is driving the most meaningful component of a sale for different types of customers.
Cool. And Scott, I know you're a bit more on the provider side of things,
yep.
But how are you helping kind of some of your brands and what you guys are doing around that with AdRoll?
Yeah, so Scott with AdRoll. For those of you who are not familiar, AdRoll is an intelligent advertising and marketing automation platform. We're built for ambitious direct-to-consumer brands, and our mission is to help level the playing field for direct-to-consumer brands and marketers to compete on the big stage. We work with brands of all sizes, but a lot of our customers tend to be smaller. They don't have limitless dollars to go and spend, and they don't have the same advantages that a lot of brands do to run a lot of tests and experiments. And so Attribution to us is really a moral obligation to make sure that we're providing insights so that our customers can make the most of every dollar that they're spending. So we help them to create a single view of their customer. We help them to activate their customer data across many different channels and make the most of that. But most importantly is helping them to really understand holistically how the mix of their marketing is working in concert to drive, exactly as you described, changes in consumer behavior and ultimately outcomes that are profitable for their business. So it's a big topic for us, and we have a lot of investment there to make sure that we're continuing to do good work there.
That's great. Let's see. So next, I want to talk about so maybe Stephen, you can take this one first. What are some of the things that you've done in the past and learnings you've had from those that got you to where you are today?
Yeah, it's been a long, ongoing process. I think for us, in any aspect of your business, it's important to understand, like, how does your business differ from any other business out there, and how do you tailor your approach accordingly? And for attribution, it's challenging in our category, and I'm sure there's other brands you probably have the same thing. Like, it's a long decision process. It may take up to 30 days for people to decide to buy our sofa, and if they saw a Subway ad and then they saw a Facebook ad on their phone, and then later on they went to the website and then entered their email and then got an email and then got retargeted with an ad, like, understanding that full end-to-end journey of what actually got them to buy is really challenging. And so what's worked for us is not trying to do too many things at once.
Yeah.
We have, like, when we launch podcasts, we're like, okay, of course you can track podcasts to some extent with a promo code, right, and see how many people are using it. But then the promo code gets leaked on, Retail Me Not and like all these other websites, and then you're like, okay, there's no way that this podcast is doing that well for us. And then we've also, the podcast, like, if there's during a sale, right, that's going to throw it off. And so anyways, what we've done is, like, looked at the overall kind of like lift in traffic, and then the corresponding lift in sales later on. Okay. And so when you launch and you spend money on podcasts initially and you ramp it up, you see, like, did it provide a general lift? And then over time, we kind of look at within a channel, if you think that channel is important, you can kind of measure different tactics within that channel. And for that, it's like you can rely on the promo codes used to say which podcast is doing better than the others. And then you can kind of look at overall what is the, what was the general lift as a channel. And then I think the other thing that is really important for us, and this is like one of the most basic things ever, is a post-purchase survey, right? And ask people, like, how'd you hear about us? And you get to, like, what actually drove the sale. Like, the thing that people remember probably drove the sale, and that's been an incredible tool for us. We have a 40% submission rate on that, and what's amazing is we haven't done a Subway ad in a year, and we still get people saying, oh, I saw your Subway ad, it was amazing. And so that's like a good way to track the long tail impact of different things that you're doing.
No, that's great. I think, because you do see something like that. I know a lot with job listing sites, that you'll apply for a job or something like that, and they'll say, how did you hear about it? But you're right. I think within e-com, I don't remember ever seeing something like that. So that's a cool idea. Jeff, how about you guys?
So I'll talk a little bit about experience across multiple employers. And I'd say that a lot of folks in the industry are looking for the perfect attribution system. And having built attribution systems internally, there have been questions about it. Having worked with a sort of monolithic external vendor, there have been questions about that. And having used different capabilities in different channels, there have been questions about that too. So I actually don't think there's a perfect answer. There's just a series of better answers than what you have today. And I think your ability to attribute is actually highly dependent on the capabilities of any given channel. So there are some channels that you have where you might actually be able to do what I consider to be the gold standard, like a lift versus a holdout of a matched audience, right? There you can really tell what changes behavior. There are some other channels where the best you might have is, spot attribution. How much did your traffic go up 10 minutes after, you showed a TV ad or something, and it doesn't make it bad. It just means that you can't actually do a holdout in that particular channel. So I think it's a matter of how do you build the best understanding of the relationships between channels and the performance within channel to the best that channel can provide. Because there isn't a perfect answer out there.
Yeah, that's some great advice. How about you, Barkha? What are you guys doing at Poshmark? What are some of the learnings that you guys have had as your models have evolved?
Yep, so it's actually a lot of similar thoughts. So again, Poshmark, it's a growth stage company. When I joined the company 5 years ago, 40 people. And like when I joined the company, we started building data systems. And what I've seen is over the time, like in the beginning, we started with something very simple. We even relied on what other people were providing us because we didn't have the data or the resources to do sophisticated modeling. And over time, we started to get into looking at the multidimensional way, trying different types of models. And but at the same time, what we realized was that when my data team, like who has a lot of like the super smart data scientists, we are building all these sophisticated models where we are trying to tell our marketing team that, hey, you can do this, and this specific model will impact like the social behavior, and this will impact this their purchasing behavior and listing behavior. This channel performs better on this metric. It's very confusing, right? When you tell marketers who have to make these decisions. So just figuring out like we still use the mathematical framework, but the goal is that you can build a lot of complex things, put them in a black box, and then actually provide a very simple solution to our marketing team so that they're able to react in the real time. They need to make a decision on like every hour, right? How do they shift their strategies? So the big learning has been you can build as complicated and sophisticated model as your data technology and resources provide you, but make sure you convert it into a very simple to understand tools which the team can use on the day-to-day basis, and then take their feedback to make sure that you haven't just built something in the vacuum, it's fitting what they need to do so that they're able to use it and they trust it, otherwise they will just not use it.
Great. Scott, how about you? Because you operate probably a bit from the disadvantage of being a provider and not necessarily having great access to everybody else's info.
Well, so actually the platform that we have for our customers is it's actually built on an independent code base deliberately, and it's designed to be an independent measurement stick. So we started out actually, so our roots are in retargeting, right? If you go back 10 years to when we began, and we've evolved a lot there, and we've got a lot in the way of software and a broad suite of services that we provide for our customers. But the conversation was always, what is the real value, the incremental value of retargeting? Was that person going to buy anyway, right? And so we started this journey a decade ago to really try to understand, well, what is the incremental value that we're bringing? And a few years back, we launched a pretty sophisticated capability to actually run a true incrementality test with ghost bidding and all the other things that people are, sort of the leading edge stuff that exists today. And the challenge was that there's a couple of things. One, people talk a lot about, well, it's too hard that can't get access to the data, all this, the technology. I really don't think that's actually the problem today. The real problem is alignment from an executive level in terms of how people are thinking about things. People talk about incrementality and they're like, well, I want incremental clicks or I want incremental CPA. That's not actually how you measure incrementality. It's really the net revenue that you're generating in addition to. So it's really aligned with the business. But to get to that place, you have to be willing to sort of unlearn and let go of a lot of the vanity metrics that we've been optimizing against for years as a marketing community. And that's really hard to do for a bunch of reasons, not the least of which is the CFO and oftentimes the board and the CEO are thinking in terms of like traditional marketing metrics. And it's hard to go to somebody that you've been going to for years and saying, well, hey, I'm doing a great job. Look at these click metrics that I was generating. And then go back and say, oh, actually, you know what? That's actually all bullshit. And it doesn't really do much. And we need to do something different now. So it's really hard. And then on top of that, there's always a trough when you think about like exponential thinking, right? There's always that dip in your performance that you have to live through. And that's really hard because people need to worry about making their numbers every quarter and making their numbers on a regular basis. So that willingness to make a change, to get to the other side of that and to get into exponential thinking, that's the hard part. And to do that, you really need everybody bought in, from the data side, from the executive suite. And in my experience working with 40,000 different companies around the world, that is the number one blocker. It's not the technology and the resources. All of that said, I think making sure that you do have a holistic view of all the different channels is what's really critical. And so, our platform is built to help you study any channel, and we do impression level tracking across all the different systems, and we really try to help you paint a full picture across all your different mechanisms. So I think the technology exists. I think the resources are there. There's certainly brilliant people solving these problems inside of companies everywhere, and it's really about making sure you have that level of alignment all the way top to bottom in your marketing organization and then across the entire executive team, in my experience.
Yeah, those are great points. I think I've run across that before. That's always one of the hard things of when things start to shift that, you know, your CEO is explaining to a board and they're used to seeing certain metrics and it's hard for them to pivot and change away from that, because then they're going to teach them all over again.
Especially if
and they're resistive.
Well, especially if what you've been optimizing for years.
Yeah.
Actually, all of a sudden the data says, nope, that was doing nothing really valuable.
Yeah.
Right? And
Yeah.
so you've got to be willing and bought in to say, hey, the world is actually different now, and willing to go that extra mile.
Can you give an example
Of companies that are willing to make the change.
of like what was the old metric and what are the new metrics that they should focus on?
Well, like, for example, measuring advertising on a click-based model and optimizing for, like, you know, last click measurement is crazy. And your Subway example is exactly the example where you might very well have given credit to somebody entirely different.
Facebook, always.
Yeah, well, and then also, like, you know, optimizing or thinking that any individual channel is actually the big thing that happened. I think your point on the thing that they remember is probably the thing that stuck with them the most, but we all are consuming content at such an alarming rate. We're processing so much information. There isn't one individual thing that's doing it, so it's the mix of things together. And so again, it's moving away from this notion that, oh, we're killing it on Facebook and Instagram all of a sudden, you know, it's like, oh, that's the holy grail. It's like, you know, and then CAC's up 50%, you know, in the last couple of years. Like, what happened? It's, well, everybody's in there trying to figure it out, and it's actually not the only thing driving it. So, yeah. And I deal with this in my own company. I mean, my marketing team will come to me and they'll say, hey, we want to move in this direction, and we're doing these things. And it's like, well, we've got to make our numbers too. Hey, you know, are we sure this is going to work? And how do we go through this? And so I was like, you talk about this all the time. You understand it. I was like, I know, but I still need you to figure it out. So yeah, it's hard. It's hard to make the shift.
Cool. Well, let's see. So let's segue that one into a little bit. That there's a lot of trends that are happening out right now with the large players out there, like the Facebooks, the Googles, and everything else, that are really more and more trying to keep their customers, their visitors, in their sites and really creating walled gardens, as well as we have a lot of privacy things going on with GDPR in Europe. You have CCPA in California. Apple's instituted a bunch of things. So what do you guys think about that, and what does that pose for the future of attribution and our ability to do some of this stuff? So, Jeff, you want to?
It certainly makes it harder. I mean, just thinking of the 2 times in the past have built attribution systems internally, the identity key, the thing that allowed you to put together an event stream, was the double-click ID, right? And that was as close to sort of an open source reliable ID that you could get. And now that that's not as easily available or not available at all, it sort of begs the question of what are you going to use to stitch together an event stream across digital channels? That's not even talking about offline. And so I think that the sort of balkanization of media is growing, and what that may mean is that in order to get to the right or the better attribution system than what you have today, you have to do a variety of experiments within channels in order to define how they all work together, versus just relying on one console to look at it all in.
Stephen, thoughts?
I agree. It makes it a lot harder, but this is over my head. This is a better question for other people on my team.
Okay. Scott, you have to deal with this a lot.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we have a lot of customers throughout Europe, and so we had, and a lot, as I talked about, you know, a lot of them are smaller companies, and so we actually built and gave them a consent management solution for free because they wouldn't otherwise have access to the tools, and I think it's really difficult to try to keep up with the regulations there, and we don't want that to be a tax on their operating system. So we've been sort of on the forefront from GDPR regulation and compliance management. I think in the near term it's going to be really painful, and because people are going to have to figure out a whole new mechanism, but I think it's actually going to be a good forcing function for brands to invest deeply in their own customer data and making sure that they're building their own identifiers and their own systems to sort of stitch things together and understand their customer in a more rich way. And I actually think that you have to do that if you really want to respect consumer privacy and compliance. You actually need to have tracking to be able to do that, because if I tell you on my mobile device, stop following me, and then I go to my desktop and you're still following me in my email, I'm like, I told you, but I don't know any better, right? Because I'm a consumer, I don't have a full appreciation for how all these things work together, and so you need to be able to do that. And I think when you get to the other side of this, you're going to find is that customers are going to be a lot more educated about what data is being used, and it's a lot less scary than people probably think it is. You're going to have people engaging more deeply with your brand and sharing more information. And I actually think it's going to, on the other side of this, you're actually going to have a richer view of every single person in a digital way, but it's going to take time to get there. And in the meantime, you're going to blow up a lot of things that you've been leveraging in technology, and it's going to be pretty painful.
It's certainly going to make for an interesting ride.
Yeah.
So, okay, we're winding down on time, so let's look to, I want to take a look forward and kind of ask the panel. So if we're looking forward, that, you know, there's lots of things people have tried, from multi-touch models, individual channel and attributing within that, media mixes, cross-device, incrementality test, holdouts, all kinds of things that people are trying to do it. But if we look forward and with these privacy issues and other things that are constantly evolving, what are your guys' thoughts and advice to the group on that? What would be a good way for them to think about it moving forward?
Yeah, so I would say in any of these problems, one size doesn't fit all. So we have to look at the problem, understand, it starts with the business question we are trying to answer. From there, look into what data we have available, what technology and the resources, and then figure out the right solution. More often than not, it will be the combination of things which will deliver a solution. For example, you might use multi-touch attribution to understand the cross-channel, like which channel is performing better at the higher level, but then you might have to still do the incremental testing to understand within a channel different types of ads, how are they performing. So I would say just start with the business value question and then find the appropriate solution. I don't think any of these solutions are ever going to be outdated. It will be a matter of the right problem and solution fit.
Jeff?
I think to look forward, actually more and more people are looking back in time at just literally the old-fashioned lift test. I mean, this concept came from the world of direct marketing and direct mail, I don't know, 30, 40 years ago. And I think now folks are actually beginning to trust that more than other forms of attribution, and I tend to. It's also interesting to see that very old school concept of how you measure is now becoming increasingly available in digital marketing platforms, in addressable TV, and lots of other channels, because I think it allows you to get around some of the challenges that exist with other forms of attribution.
I completely agree with that, and I also think I would take it a step further, which is a little bit to what you just said, is talk to your customers. And yes, establish a relationship and understand what they're comfortable sharing, but also just talk to them to understand what worked and what didn't work. And it's not just a post-purchase survey for brands that do have the ability to interact with their customers in some sort of chat function, or if you have a physical retail presence or whatnot. Like, having conversations with people goes such a long way in understanding, and if you talk to enough of them, you don't have to talk to all of them, like, that'll paint the best picture that you've ever gotten, and no tool on the planet could ever tell you that. Now, you can use those tools to kind of inform decisions and see if it matches up with the feedback that you're getting, but the most old school form of communication, talking to a person, like, it kind of trumps everything.
Great point. That would be a nice segue into now a retention panel that we could have immediately after this. Although Charlie might get mad if we do that. Scott?
I would just add on, so I would agree with all of it. I think, from a lift testing perspective, really, I think it's important to educate yourself on how to do that properly. Again, I think a lot of folks will do A/B testing, or they'll look at PSA ads and a lot of the old school text, and that actually doesn't work in the world that exists today. So get some education on that stuff. So if you're going to invest in that, but I definitely think that's the kind of North Star that everyone should work to, no matter where you are in your journey. Definitely move away from a last click model and move towards at least a multi-touch attribution model. But I think to Barkha's point, there's a lot of different ways to skin that cat. The other comment, though, Steve, I think the idea of thinking across all of your channels, and I do think we tend to focus too much when we talk about attribution on just our paid channels, and we don't think holistically about the entire experience, and frankly, the entire customer experience all the way through to their existing customer. But those chat channels, when you're actually delivering your products and shipping your products, these are all key touch points that you have, and they have a tremendous impact on the customer experience, and that can impact not just your attribution for that customer coming back and being a repeat customer, but also the referrals that they're going to generate, how much of a brand ambassador they're going to become for you. And that flywheel is really critical to build, so that customer centricity and really thinking holistically as a marketer across all of your channels and starting to take more ownership of the entire customer experience I think that's really important, and I think it's going to be, I believe the charge of the CMO of the future is owning that entire customer experience and really taking a bigger role. I don't agree with like the way McDonald's and Hyatt and others are doing things to deconstruct the marketing org. I don't think that the problem with marketing today is that it's too broad. I actually think it's too siloed in terms of what it owns and its impact.
Great. Okay. Well, we are out of time, but I want to thank each of you for a great discussion here today, and hopefully the audience here got some great information. Thanks a lot.